The Vancouver Hockey Show, another edition of the VHS. Andrew Wadden alongside producer Aaron. And if I sound excited this week, Aaron, because the Canucks are playing some pretty damn exciting hockey right now.
What a road trip.
Unbelievable, dude. So we're recording this just after they shut out the Buffalo Sabres 1-0. Thatcher Demko, basically his turn to dominate a game because, you know, he's watching the lotto line do it throughout the week. He's like, don't worry, I got you this time. It was a spicy game against the Sabres as well. We'll get to that in just a moment, but Let's hit rewind as we do each and every week here. 4-0 since we last spoke to you. 6-3 over the Rangers, 5-2 over the Islanders, 4-3 in OT against Pitt, and 1-0 against Buffalo, as mentioned. Lotto line has 27 combined points. Going into the game against Buffalo, Elias Pettersson was flirting with NHL history. He got the game-winning goal in 4 straight games, and apparently it's the first time that's happened on the road because this has only happened twice other times, that is, for Petey doing it, and it was Daniel Alfredson that scored 4 straight game-winning goals. And then Newsy Lalonde, and if you've never heard that name, well, don't worry, played in the 20s for the Montreal Canadiens. He had 5 straight game-winning goals. So Petey was flirting with a record that is over a century old. Just unbelievable stuff that the Canucks are doing, that top line is doing. But there are some question marks and some concerns, if you will, Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
Going on with that second line. What is the Canucks second line right now? Because I asked that in one of our videos on TikTok. And if you're not following us on TikTok, get on there, Vancouver Hockey. And I suggested, what's the best mix for this second line right now? And somebody replied and actually said, it doesn't matter with Suter's line. He's like, the second line is actually Blueger's line with Garland and Joshua. And I thought to myself, I can buy that. They're producing like one right now. But is that going to be sustainable? And they're starting to take a little bit of a dip. I'm not going to say that they're not playing well because really there's not a lot of guys that aren't playing well on this team right now. But a bit of a concern could be moving forward, what's going to happen here if the lotto line isn't the one that's producing every single night? You can't really lean on Demko to steal you a game every single night, although it certainly seems that way, especially when they're ahead. I don't know if you caught that stat on the broadcast, and I'm sure it's been updated since the game finished. But when the Canucks are leading, Demko's got a save percentage of 930 something. It's unbelievable. The games are on lock, really, if you get a lead with Demmer in net. But there are some concerns, as I mentioned. That's now 6 games without a goal for Suter and Kuzmenko. And your boy, Mikheyev, who rang one off the post today.
I wanted him to get that so bad.
Oh, I bet you he wanted it even more.
Mm-hmm.
11 games now, Aaron, without a goal. That's your second line. So, again, slight bit of a concern right now, but when you're rolling the way they're rolling, really just getting nitpicky at this point. There is somebody, though, that I'm wondering should get a shot. Nils Höglander had those 2 nice goals against the Rangers. The one between the legs, unbelievable. And if you dive into sort of the way he's been playing as of late, just analytically, everything's there. His last few games, he's creating chances. They're in the offensive zone more than they're in the defensive zone. They're not digging pucks out of their net when he's out on the ice. But yet was the low man on time on ice against Pittsburgh, just 8-19. So it seems like between Höglander and Kuzmenko right now, they just live in that talk-it doghouse. And you probably can understand why. A lot of it has to do with the defensive side of the game. But Nils Höglander is starting to create when he's out there. Why not give him a shot in the top 6? We'll talk about Höglander with Rick Dhaliwal from Dolly and Donnie in Vancouver. We have him coming up on the show here. So we will talk about Kuzmenko. I want to ask Dhaliwal about, his value right now. Because it does seem that if there is somebody that you're going to dangle, maybe Höglander's that guy. He only makes $1 million and $1.1 million. He's got 1 more year left. So all things that sort of check boxes, just all depends on what the rest of the league sort of feels about him. It's tough to really sell a player, though, if you're burying him on the bench a lot of the game. Especially when, you look at the analytics, you look at the chances, you look at, and they all seem to be positive in his way. So it's an interesting sort of, story to sort of keep an eye on. With Kuzma or with Höglander, that is. And, perhaps maybe he'll get a shot in the next game. Maybe we'll see him against Columbus up on that, in that top 6 on that second line. We'll see how long the lotto line even stays together, really. Before we get to Dhaliwal, the NHL All-Star editions, the fan vote, those started trickling in right before we started recording here. and all the Canucks are in. Every one of them. No, I'm just kidding. There's Demko, Besser, Petey, Miller, the guys that I was making a joke about the entire roster. They could put the entire roster in there the way they're playing. They should have the Canucks play against the NHL All-Stars, see who will win.
I just hope that they book the refundable packages on the travel website, because who saw this at the beginning of the year?
That is true. Yeah, exactly. How many of those guys were like booking stuff on Expedia like months ago? Now I got to go to Toronto. Damn it. All right. The Canucks did not get eliminated today, and they will not get eliminated for quite a while here, at least from any sort of playoff race, because they are definitely in it right now. 5-1 on that road trip. Let's get to our buddy Rick Dhaliwal, though, and we'll talk about some trades, trade targets, and perhaps what the Canucks might be thinking moving ahead of this trade deadline. All right, here is the man himself. They call him Scoops. Rick Dhaliwal joining the show for the first time ever. Ricky, how are you?
Really good, guys.
So looking ahead here, there's a reason why I want to have you on, because there just seems to be a lot of discussion right now with the Canucks when it comes to any sort of movement, trades, whatever, right? And as we know, Rutherford, they don't sit on their hands. They make a lot of moves. No. They've already been making a lot of moves, and they made a lot of good moves. So what I want to ask you, because you talk to the agents all the time, and I've been reading your pieces that you do with Drance and whatnot, keeping up on everything. What are the key trade needs for the Canucks right now? We've heard top six forward. We've heard they want to bulk up the D. What is priority number one for Rutherford, you think?
Well, if you go with, let's talk about the Lotto line. If you keep these guys going, whoever put that, together, wow, that's the best line in hockey. Pettersson, 12 points in 4 games. That's the best player in hockey right now. If you put them together and keep them together the rest of the way and even into the playoffs, you're going to need more. You notice the third line's kind of dried up lately. And the second line, Kuzmenko, he doesn't got a point in 6 games. So you like to add in the top 6. But I also think adding size is important as well. They're not the biggest forward group. Blue line, how do you not love the Canucks blue line? I mean, size-wise, 3 guys over 6'5", and they only have 1 defenseman under 6 feet. So that's the dream size-wise. Perfect. Up front, I think. And then, I'd heard that they were in on Jordan Greenway of Buffalo. Jordan Greenway is 6'6", 230. So maybe they're out there trying to hunt for size, top 6 winger. I would like to add another right shot D. Andrew, remember Rick Tocchet said he's not really keen on moving guys left to right, right to left? Well, Cole's doing that right now. Chris Tanev's name comes up quite a bit in the market, and definitely Canucks like him. But, all these guys' names that are coming up, Andrew, it doesn't really matter. You can come up with the names. It's what's the acquisition cost? What are you willing to give up? Are you willing to mortgage the future? The Boston Bruins, I keep bringing this up this week, and I'll do it with you, Andrew. Boston Bruins had the best regular season in the history of the NHL last year. They went out and got, Bertuzzi and Orlov. So what happened to them? They're out in round 1. The Rangers added Kane and Tarasenko out in round 1. If the Canucks management feels they're a top elite team and they got the right type of team to play in the playoffs, then go for it. But boy, oh boy, recent history has showed us all these teams that load up at the deadline, very few of them, advance past round 1 or 2.
The Leafs always make a move as well, and look what they do. They continue to fail in the first round. And it costs them in the end, because then you look and you go back and you look at draft capital, you don't got it anymore because you moved a lot of it, right?
Yeah, big time.
I want to get to assets in just a moment, but the name Jordan Greenway to me is intriguing, because when J-Pat and I were doing our pod together, we used to bring him up quite a bit because both of us loved him. However, his game has sort of fallen off a little bit. Like he started to peak there in Minnesota back in the 21-22 season, 10 goals. But then since then, he really hasn't followed it up offensively. Now, is that what the target of the Canucks should be, though? Should they be looking for offensive players, or would Greenway be one of those guys that perhaps they would add him, but add plus on top of him?
But I would say to you, they already got a guy like Greenway and Joshua. That's true. The type of guy, big guy who can move, forecheck, and look at Joshua's turned into a good penalty killer as well. The Penguins game there, they killed off 4 penalties, 2 crucial ones in the third. I mean, the PK was really good. But look, they've checked in on a lot of players around the NHL. They got their wish list. They're still, the only thing I caution, I know there's been a lot of talk in Vancouver about trades, but we still got a long way to go to the deadline. people bring up Gensel. Well, are the Penguins ready to move him? I mean, are they still in the playoff hunt? Can they make one legitimate shot to sign Gensel? Jim Rutherford signed Gensel to that current 5-year, $30 million deal. He still loves him. Guy's got 74 goals in the last 2 years, 18 this year. He's a good player. But there's still a lot to be figured out before Gensel gets moved or he doesn't get moved. Can understand right now in the market, Canucks are second overall in the NHL standings. It's been a dream start, Andrew. But the only thing they've really done is have a good first half, right? They've had a really good first half. Let's see what they do in the second half. But you know what? I can see why people are saying second overall in the NHL, trade deadline 6, 7, 8 weeks away, whatever it is. Let's start thinking about who we can add to the group. But again, what is the cost and what are you willing to give up?
Yeah. And Canucks have had everything break their way this year. I know everybody wants to go to the PDO, but the PDO is true. It's like 106 right now. It's ridiculous. Like the mean is 100. So It will come down at some, but it's not even the PDO, because I did defend that to a certain degree. Is like, if you're getting quality chances and you're burying those quality chances, well, that's not luck. You're creating that, right? So there is a little bit of creation in it too. But the point is this, is that they haven't had any injuries really either. And that could be a key factor.
That's the big factor
going into the trade deadline.
That's the big factor that you just brought up about injuries. Because right now, the only two players they have injured are Giuseppe and Brisebois. They've been really healthy, like all season long. Yeah. And health is, especially in top 6 and top 4D, that's where you want your health, right? Yeah. And, that's where they've been super healthy. And they've also been very strong up the middle of the ice this year. I think Suter and Bluger were absolutely essential signings in the summer, very important ones, because can you imagine them right now without Suter and Bluger? I mean, essentially, it would be Miller, Pettersson, and Amon, and one other guy. They've been really, really strong. Those two signings have played a big factor in the depth up the middle of the ice. They've been really strong up the center ice position for sure. Defense
has been strong as well, and especially guys stepping up like Noah Juleson when Carson Soucy was out for a while. Yeah. Juleson just stepped in and did a fantastic job. So that's, to me, that, like, I have said on this pod that my number one target would be Chris Tanev. I want 8 solid NHL defense, not taking anything away from Noah Juleson, but he can be number 9. I want 8 solid NHL defensemen, 7 solid NHL defensemen, like guys you can rely on. One goes down, next guy steps up, because the Canucks are going to take a run. There's going to be injury. We know that. Yeah. We know what it takes to get through the NHL playoffs, right? So to me, if you are going to spend an asset or a quality asset, I'd like to have Chris Tanev, because I think you could probably re-sign him on a 2-year deal that might be team friendly afterwards. As we know, he's getting longer in the tooth. He's not going to command what he makes now. It won't be too much further down than what he makes now. And I know you were talking about Zadorov and Myers in that regard as well, right? We'll get to those guys in just a second. But to me, Tanev would be my go. I want him first. We can start out. We can go anywhere else after we get Tanev first. Yeah. Here's the problem with Tanev. That's going to cost you a bit, right? So, they just gave up a 3rd and a 5th for Zadorov. Tanev really likes, the city of Vancouver. He enjoyed his time here. He never wanted to leave. You guys know that, right? They couldn't make him an offer because salary cap, they were up against it and they had the salary cap issues. But you know what? Tanev, I don't know if they're going to get him or not. I'm sure, but I do know the interest has been there all year long in Chris Tanev. But there's numerous teams after him. Like I was told the other night, several teams after Chris Tanev right now. And this guy is just so respected around the league by players, management, coaches. Everybody likes this guy, and he's a warrior. This guy put his face in front of a puck earlier this year to block a shot. I mean, like did he play the next game too? Yeah, and you remember the game? You remember the game in Winnipeg where he blocked a shot and he crawled off the ice? I mean, the guy's just a warrior. Should never have left town in the first place. He is a player that the Canucks have had interest in all year, and won't be easy to get Tanev. There's several teams after that guy right now. And Calgary's in the same boat as Pittsburgh. They're trying to figure out when it comes to playoffs right now. They're 2 points out as we record this right now. Tanev's not the only guy. There's rumors that Markstrom could be on the move. Lindholm. There's rumors that Noah Hannafin might re-sign in Calgary. So it's Calgary's in a very interesting spot. Do you kind of rebuild, or the people that don't like to use the word rebuild will use the word retool. I mean, they did it in this city for years. We're going to retool. We got a 2-year plan. Look, they got to make a decision. Are you going to rebuild or not? Bottom line.
But if they can get a lot of assets for Markstroms, the Tanevs, the Lindholms, I think Calgary will be set up nice for the future.
All right. Well, you talk about assets when it comes to the Canucks. What are the available assets, and are there anybody that's off the table? Because in my eyes, I look at Lekaramaki, what he did at the World Juniors. I look at Tom Wielander and what he is, what he did at the juniors, but what he is, right shot guy, big defenseman. Those two guys to me are off limits. But the rest, I will hear on.
Well, there's guys on the farm. Klimovich is there. I'm not saying trade him. I'm just saying there are pieces that other teams will look at. They will obviously look at Vasily Podkolzin. They would look at, Atu Ratu is a guy that is coming on this year. I'm not talking to you about the guy the Canucks are willing to move. I'm talking to you about guys that other teams would be attracted to on the farm. All I can tell you, they do have guys on the farm that have potential. And Artur Silovs, remember his World Hockey Championships. That's another guy that other teams would know is a good goaltender, a good young and upcomer in Vancouver as well. So the Canucks have to make up their minds, and draft capital, as you mentioned it, they've given up so many first, second round picks, the previous regime, really put them in a hole. This current management team had to go via Europe and via NCAA to really stockpile Abbotsford, because there just wasn't much there because all the draft picks were gone. So a lot of free agent signings, the Aiden McDonoughs, the Sassoons, all those guys, Kito Hiroshi, Cole Ward. And, basically Abbotsford was put together by this current regime through the NCAA in Europe. So now you got to let these guys cook, get better. The Canucks need 1 to 2 to 3 players next year, Andrew, to play and step up and move up to the big league team, because they got 7, 8, 9 UFAs. They've got, they're not going to be able to re-sign everybody. There's going to be some guys that are not going to be brought back. That's where you hope, there's 1 or 2 guys ready in Abbotsford to make the jump.
What about Kuzmenko? Does he have any cachet around the league? I know that he has a $5.5 million contract, and that's a detriment these days if you carry money, especially if you're not producing like on the level that you were last year. Yeah, is he still a valuable asset?
Yeah, he is. There's interest there still, but I mean, he's got to get going. He's got no points in 6 games. He's got to get going. There is interest, but his agent, Dan Milstein, doesn't want him traded. Milstein's got a really special relationship with this management group in the sense that he's got so many Canucks, they talk daily. As bad as it got with all the healthy scratches with Kuzmenko, Milstein never came close to asking for a trade. I mean, he every time I asked him after a healthy scratch, your thoughts, he would always say, we're going to make it work. We're going to make it work. We're going to make it work. So this is a player that Milstein is hell-bent on making. And last time I asked him, he said, not only me, but Andre doesn't want to leave as well. We want to make it work in Vancouver. So there is interest there, Andrew, but he said $5.5 million. He's not produced at the rate he did last year. So much of the NHL trading now is money in, money out. How can you make it work, right? So yeah, it's a big contract to move. It's a big one. They couldn't move Myers. They couldn't move Garland all last year and the year before. So, those guys, they couldn't move them. I don't think it would be easy to move Kuzmenko as well. I mean, that's 5.5 is 5.5, right?
Yeah. Currency's king in this league right now if you've got cap space, right? It's funny, too, when you bring up names like Myers. Like, imagine this team if they had have traded Besser and Myers last year. Like, where would they be right now, right? And especially Besser, the way he's produced. But also Myers. Like, there is way less chaos in his game right now. He seems to have, found a happy place, if you will.
Give credit, Andrew, to Sergei Gonchar and Adam Foote.
Of course.
Played a big role. And Tyler Myers has gone from, they make these jokes about the giraffe and chaos. But you know what? He plays 20 minutes a night. That game against Pittsburgh, no defenseman had more PK time than him. And then, of course, everybody wants him back next year at $1 million or $2 million. That's not the Canucks are essentially by paying him 20 minutes every night and playing him so much on the PK and fixing his game. The Canucks are giving his agent, JP Barry, so much ammunition for July 1st to go on that market and get. I'm not saying he's going to get $5-6 million. What I'm saying it's not going to be 1 or 2. Maybe it's in the 3s, but I laugh when people say, I'll take Myers back at $1 or $2 million. The way the Canucks are playing him and the amount of minutes he's getting 20 minutes, Andrew, on the second best team in the NHL. If he was getting 9 or 10 minutes on a weak team, yeah, you can get him for 1 or 2 next year. But you know what? I'm just saying that playing him every 20 minutes every night is helping his agent's cause on July 1st. But again, he's not going to get 5 or 6 million, but he should do okay. He should get up somewhere in the threes is my guess.
Yeah, absolutely. He'll be 34 in February, but he's still got game. I could see a 2-year deal at somewhere around $7 million for him from another team. And I think that team would be happy with that. Now, will he be worth that after the second year? Well, time will tell. But when it comes to the other contract negotiations, I know everyone's talking about Pettersson, and rightfully so. But you mentioned it earlier, like there's a ton of UFA work that they have to get done. So, this just feels like a year that perhaps everything's sort of coming together. Guys are playing better than expectation. Like maybe it's just time to go for it. Now, go for it is a pretty vague term because you don't want to trade all your draft capital. You don't want to trade all your quality assets. So you're going to have to try to find a happy medium somewhere in there. But when you talk to contract and negotiations, like, yeah, Petey's top of the list. Phil Hronek is there too. What's he going to be worth? You mentioned Myers, but also Zadorov. And what's the plan with Zadorov? Because yeah, we've heard all the right things from him. Like he loves it here, et cetera, et cetera. He's compared his time to Calgary to Vancouver, and he talks about how much easier it is of a system for him here in Vancouver. So everything's aligning for him outside of perhaps the salary cap, which could be a problem when trying to bring everyone back.
Well, they like Zadorov. There was even a rumor before he got here of a sign and trade, but it didn't happen. Yeah. He's 28 years old. I think the word that I'm getting is he's looking for term on July 1st, right? So, I mean, Canucks will obviously talk to him before then. They really like this player a lot. So, you know what? Okay, so you got Zadorov, Myers, Cole, Bluger, DeSmith, Lafferty, Dakota, Joshua. Like, I mean, the list, pretty significant. They are not going to be able to do every single one of those guys. There's just no way. With Pettersson looking at a massive raise, Hronek's looking at a massive raise, and then you got to go re-sign all those guys. That's going to be tough to do. I look at a guy like Dakota Joshua. He's getting noticed around the league, right? He really is. Teams are kind of perked up and going, hold it. This guy, he's kind of figuring it out, the NHL, because really, honestly, before he came to Vancouver, Dakota Joshua was not a regular in the NHL. He was not a regular in the NHL. He was kind of that guy going up and down from the farm. This is the first time that he's been rock solid in the lineup all the time. He's killing penalties. He's forechecking well. He's driving to the net. He's got soft hands. There's some plays he makes that where you go, you know what, for a big guy, he's got soft hands. And, his confidence is through the roof. That third line, 2 guys are UFAs, Dakota Joshua and Teddy Bluger. Don't tell me they don't want to re-sign both, because they do. Because, Teddy Bluger is a very smart hockey player. He's a guy that Rick Tocchet, if you ask Rick Tocchet about Teddy Bluger, he's going to rave about this guy. He's smart at both ends of the rink. Very smart player. So they got big decisions to make. I'm not so sure, Andrew, they can keep everyone. In fact, I think it'll be very tough.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I think they should go all in right now this year. I think they should try to, and by all in, I don't mean trade everything. I mean, make a significant push. If you think the team's going to be better, then make the trade. But if it's going to be a detriment to the team, especially down the road, then I think that's where you cause some pause there.
Well, hands off on Willander, because he's a year or two away, but he's a guy who figures to be in the top 4 on the right side down the stretch. And they don't really have a right shot D in Abbotsford that's knocking on the door in Vancouver, barging in saying, let me in because I'm ready. I don't see that, Abbotsford. So to me, Willander and Lekaramaki are untouchables for me, but that's just me. Yeah. And Hoaglander's name's out there too, but it's so hard to get young kids his age to play in the NHL too, right? So that's going to be a tough call. His name's out there all the time. His name's been out there at every deadline, I think, for the last 2 years,
He's valuable because he's only $1 million, 1.1 million. He's got one more year on it too. And he's got 12 goals and he plays 8 minutes a night, or, it's maybe not that low, but somewhere around 10 minutes a night. And he's got 12 goals, Ricky. Like, the guy produces when he's out there. Okay. They don't give him a lot of opportunity, though.
Andrew, before you have an aneurysm on Hoaglander, listen, he gets in the top 6, then he gets to the 4th line in the healthy scratch. It's the consistency that kills you with Hoaglander, right? It's you want it every game. Like the game in New York against the Rangers, how great was he? You just love the kid. His mortar's always going. But he doesn't have Tocchet's trust right now. And the trust isn't there, whether it's puck management or it's play without the puck and playing your own end. These young kids that come into this league, talking to a scout the other day, and it's the same thing. You can dominate minor hockey and junior hockey till you're blue in the face. But when you get to the NHL, if you're not going to play in all three zones, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I've seen it at minor hockey, the kid going up and down the ice. He's going up and down the ice, but he's not doing much else, right?
Yeah.
But Höglander is going to be interesting to me if they put him in a deal to get a piece, because they like him a lot. There's a ton to like. His energy, his compete level, everything. But there's just something missing for Tocchet where he bounces him around, either first line, fourth line, or healthy scratch. It's happening. The consistency's not there with him. But you just love the kid. You really do. You really do.
Yeah, 12 goals, which is fourth amongst the team, but he only plays 11.08 average ice time right now. So that's good production. You know, he gets a goal a minute right now if you sort of look at it that way. But
or if the Canucks are in a bind, they could always put Quinn Hughes at center.
That is true. We've heard that there was rumblings that Quinn Hughes is going to be a center. Ricky, when I saw that quote, I kind of thought, well, it's not the worst idea in the world. Like, the guy could play forward. Don't get me wrong. You don't want... Quinn Hughes is such a magician on the blue line. The fact that he can do those things, but it wasn't the worst idea in the world. I saw people, just absolutely trashing it. I was kind of behind it a little bit. I'd like to see it. Why not? With that team last year?
Well, first of all, I'm obviously joking. If he doesn't win the Norris Trophy this year, I'll be absolutely stunned.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So Andrew, Bruce Boudreau made the comments on TV. So whenever something like this happens, I get 500 DMs, right? So
yeah, of course. Yeah.
I was busy last night, so I didn't make any calls on it. Someone told me this morning, though, that somebody in a hockey department meeting suggested the idea, or somebody in the hockey department suggested the idea. Simple as that. Like, you nailed it. It's hockey teams talk. I don't know if it was a coach or somebody higher, but the idea was pushed to the point where somebody asked Boudreau. He said no. And of course, as usual, in Vancouver will be made bigger. I don't think in this situation you're going to get a name. The trolls on Twitter, the National Enquirer accounts, they love these kind of stories, right? Because they're looking for dirt, right? Oh, it was the owner. No, it wasn't. The owner had nothing to do with this. So any idea by anyone in a hockey department, whether it's minor hockey, junior, or pro, Andrew, is with the intention of making the team better, right? Hughes did play forward, though, Andrew, till the age of 13. Yeah. But he's a stud defender.
Of course. But he could play forward. That's my point. Like, the guy's so freaking good that he could. It's not the most ridiculous idea.
No, but
it's not going to happen. Like, we all know it. Yeah. Like, it was never going to happen. But you're right. Like, just everything gets blown right out of proportion. There's a lot of bozos in this city that like to take shots at the owner, though. Yeah, I don't know if you're aware of that. So I'm sure Frankie can take it.
Yeah. No, but I do want to say this about Hughes at center. On one hand, Andrew, he's such a great passer. The job of a centerman is to distribute the puck, is it not? Of course. It was just an idea. But on the other hand, he's 5'10", 180 pounds. Most top six centers in the NHL are 6'2", 6'3", 6'4". I mean, most of them are big. So, I mean, from that part of it, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Yeah. And also, it's weird that this idea was thought of after JT Miller has signed his massive contract. For me, it's an unnecessary distraction for the Canucks. You know what's sad, Andrew, is Twitter has changed reporting. Like, it's why I miss the old days in the traditional TV, radio, newspapers. Like, look at the vicious Corey Perry rumor, right? False.
Yeah.
The airplane going to Toronto with the Tawny, right? False. The Pettersson to Chicago rumor, false. Now the Cutter Gauthier, Kevin Hayes story where Hayes was getting death threats. It's a very dangerous time for reporters reporting. No matter what anybody throws on Twitter, it could be a guy in a basement in New York. 80% of the people on Twitter believe it. It's very sad. Like, we don't live in a society where we wait for the proof and the evidence. We judge right away. I don't want any proof. I don't want any proof of Pettersson going to Chicago rumor. I'm just going to believe it. Most of these guys that throw this out are not even accredited media, Andrew. It's a very dangerous.
Well, I mean, you've also got accredited media that are basically fanboys nowadays. It's just ridiculous. And guys like you are guys that we need still, because you're the kind of guy that goes out and sources the information, as opposed to somebody who's just in their basement.
Yeah, and you got the troll accounts, the National Enquirer guys. They love all these stories like the Boudreau one. There's, to me, trying to convert, Hughes to center because somebody in the organization thought it was a good idea. They looked into it. It didn't work. It didn't happen. Like, Canucks are second overall in the NHL standings, and yet this is story. I don't get it, but it's a very tough time in our industry, and Twitter has really changed the way people report, and the way we accept news now is different. I grew up waiting for Tony Parsons at 6:00 in Vancouver on BCTV. I grew up with Neil McRae and getting my sports there, and reading Tony Gallagher and Jim Taylor and all those. And there was a sense of pride back then, and we got it wrong too. Listen, I get stuff wrong too, but I don't get stuff wrong because I'm making it up. We're human beings. But the problem in our jobs, Andrew, is we have public jobs. And when we're wrong, the haters are ready. Like, yeah. I think 3% of Twitter is haters. I think 3% of Twitter is people who hate the media, and another 3% that just like to disturb. And it's a very tough, grinding space, Twitter. It's an emotionally draining site, but it's there. We got to do it. I try my best every day. I'm going to get stuff wrong. Hockey people, here's the other thing, Andrew. Hockey people change their minds. Like, I'll give you an example. The Canucks were told the Flames were not, super excited about trading Zadorov or Tanev to Vancouver. So me and along with a few other guys reported the Flames don't want to trade Zadorov to Vancouver. And then 3 weeks later, the Flames trade him. They changed their minds. And plus the Canucks didn't ask the Flames to take any money back. So that was the key. But hockey people what hockey people tell you one week is not necessarily, like, I'll give you an example. The Canucks were never going to buy out OEL. They had told OEL in his exit meeting, right now, plan is not to buy you out. But they couldn't move Myers and they couldn't move Garland. And the July 1st was coming. How do you think they signed Suter, Bluger, and all these guys? They signed them because
they changed their mind.
They got the cap space from the OEL. So hockey people change their minds all the time, just like you and I and everybody else. But it's a dangerous time right now in our media when people throw stuff out, and then a week later, look at Corey Perry had to come out. Look at Kevin Hayes had to do an interview in St. Louis. Everybody has to come out and deny, false rumors on Twitter. So it's a very tough time.
Yeah, the buyout one would be interesting, though, because that's when you really would need to talk to the owner and get the sign off on that one, right? So you can see why that would be a tough decision to make. It was the right one in the end. Well, let's see if it's the right one in the end. They're not, let's keep in mind, they're not really feeling the pain of the OEL buyout right now. It's only $146,000 on the cap. It goes to 2.3 next year, 4.7 for 2 more years after that. Like, they're going to be holding on to the ghost of OEL for a little while here still.
Well, and when it gets to $4 million and $4 million and $4 million for, I think, 3 years in a row, that's when you get out the extra strength Tylenol, because it's going to hurt.
You know all about that. Hey, but you mentioned Corey Perry there, but just before I do let you go, and let's keep in mind, folks, those rumors were just stupid, ridiculous, gross, all of that stuff. But also, the guy didn't have to get reinstated by the NHL. I know Elliott and all the insiders have made that clear. Like, that was a decision made by the Chicago Blackhawks. That was not a decision made by the NHL. So, Corey Perry, Vancouver Canucks? Maybe?
No, I was told 2 days ago that as of now, the Canucks are not.
Yeah.
They're not. He's not on the radar. But again, like I always say, I can report this week they're not on the radar. Maybe he becomes on the radar in 4 or 5 weeks. I don't know. But I know that when the original Corey Perry story happened, the Canucks were not interested at that time. I was told this week they're not interested. But I always have to now say, as of this week, they're not. But I mean, I don't know in the future. But think about it, though. Phil Kessel, they thought about in the summer. Kessel's still available. The Canucks they talked to his agent, Phil. I mean, Rick Tocchet coached Phil Kessel in Arizona, right? So there, and Rutherford brought Kessel to Pittsburgh, right? So these guys know Kessel really well. They talked to Kessel's agent in the summer, and I think, it just didn't happen. So, look, Corey Perry, where's the fit? Where's the fit?
It's true.
You got a great,
it's true.
You got a great third line. So, who does he bump? Is he a fourth line guy? Are you thinking top six? The only good thing about Perry is it's not going to cost you anything, and he's going to be cheap, right?
He's got tons of pedigree when it comes to the playoffs, and he's been known to take a team to a Stanley Cup final. Again, you're bringing on baggage at that point too, because there was clearly something bad enough that the Chicago Blackhawks had to go, you know what, thanks, but no thanks. Like, we don't want you.
Clearly he himself said in his tweet that he's got issues that he's got to clean up, right? So team's got to really do their homework there, what I do believe is happening is there is a lot of interest in Corey Perry. So, I would presume it's going to be from playoff teams looking to go for a big run.
Yep. And if you're going to load up that lotto line and you do need some scoring in the second line, perhaps if the third line's not giving it to you, Phil Kessel, that's what he does. Scores goal. He had 14 last year.
Yeah, but
14.
But Andrew, Phil has not played in 10 months a hockey game.
Can you imagine what Phil's shape would be right now?
Wow.
He wasn't the most sculpted specimen to begin with.
Well, hold it a second. Phil Kessel is in the same boat as Alexander Edler. They're kind. Hey, before we laugh, look at Joe Flacco. He was sitting at home in New Jersey and waiting on the phone to ring. The phone rings and he goes to Cleveland, goes 4-1, gets him in the playoffs, and he's been incredible. But there's one thing about sitting at home. If you're going to wait for a phone call, you can't sit there and eat hot dogs 24/7. You can't do it.
That's my point. I don't think Joe Flacco was eating hot dogs. I could be wrong, though. Who knows?
Hey, and Kessel can't be on the Andrew Wadden hot dog diet because that's not going to work for him.
Here we go. I've heard that you like a dog or two down your throat. All right, let's get you out of here, Dhaliwal. We'll have you back soon, though. Thanks for joining, buddy.
Anytime, guys. Anytime for you. Congrats on your podcast. You and Aaron do a great job. And I just wish you guys all the best success.
And I do have to apologize, Ricky. I don't have a theme song for you, but I'll tell you what it is because you're a man of the 80s. You're talking to all the agents. Perfect theme song, Careless Whispers.
Oh, Careless Whisper. That hits the spot, Aaron. And you know what? People rip me but the 80s music I wasn't 40 or 50 in the 80s. I was a teenager. So that's what we were into, Wham and all that stuff. But the Good Heart, Def Leppard, the Scorpions, Quiet Riot. I was in all that stuff. Are you kidding? Billy Idol, Bruce Springsteen, John Cougar. All that stuff was a go back in the 80s.
Ricky,
all of it.
I had a Quiet Riot jacket. Like, I got a jean jacket, and remember the album? What was the first? I think they only had one album, wasn't it? And he's in the straight jacket. I had that airbrushed onto a jacket. I was probably 6 years old. I didn't even really know who they were, but I loved it because my brothers did. So there you go. We have a connection in that regard with Quiet Riot. Always great to catch up with my buddy Dhaliwal. We love to take the piss out of one another. I think people think we actually hate each other on Twitter. I don't really go at him as much anymore because, to be honest with you, I kind of hate Twitter. Just like Dhaliwal was talking about. Just can't be bothered anymore, really. But I love the guy, and he's always got so much great information. So many thanks to Rick Dhaliwal. Dolly and Donnie, weekdays at 10 a.m. on Check TV. And if you want just sort of local sports coverage, like, they're the guys. Like, really, their show's so great. A lot of humor in there. And yeah, I know Henderson's there too, but they do a great job. So many thanks to Rick Dhaliwal for joining us. I love Henderson too, just taking the piss. All right, we'll be back as we normally are every Monday here. And hey, we'll see if the Canucks can keep things rolling. But one more game left on the road trip for them. Let's see if they can go 6-1, Aaron, on the longest road trip of the season. See if they can pull that off. We'll update you, though, next week here on the Vancouver Hockey Show. Thanks for listening, everyone.